Ravi was a man who never asked for much. He worked as a guard on distant colonies, far away from the busy human worlds. His days were often the same. He would stand watch, check gates, and sometimes escort traders who feared being robbed. He was not rich, but his work kept him alive, and he was content with that. One evening, while resting in a small outpost on the edge of a barren moon, Ravi received a message that surprised him. It was not from human employers, but from an alien envoy. The message was short and formal. Two sisters needed protection. They were not ordinary citizens but heirs of a respected alien clan. The envoy explained that their lives were in danger because of a family conflict. Rival relatives wanted them gone so they could take control of the clan's wealth and influence. At first, Ravi thought it was a mistake. Why would alien nobles hire a simple human guard when they had their own soldiers and advanced defenses? Still, curiosity pushed him to accept the meeting. The envoy arranged transport, and within hours, Ravi found himself on a small vessel heading to a moon covered in shimmering silver dust. When he arrived, he saw the sisters for the first time. They lived in a large dwelling built from crystals that reflected light in countless colors. It looked fragile from afar, yet when he stepped inside, he saw strong walls and doors that could seal tightly. The place was both beautiful and secure. The sisters stood waiting in the main hall. They were almost identical, with tall slender forms and calm eyes that seemed to carry both wisdom and sadness. Their names were Lyra and Nira. They greeted Ravi politely, though he noticed the tension in their voices. "You are human," Lyra said. Her tone was not unkind, only surprised. "Yes," Ravi replied simply. He had learned long ago that few words could sometimes say more than many. Nira studied him for a moment, then spoke softly. "We expected someone different. But if the envoy trusted you, then so will we." Ravi nodded. He did not try to impress them with promises or bold words. He only said, "I will protect you. That is why I am here." They seemed to accept his answer. The envoy explained further details. The sisters were daughters of a respected leader who had recently passed away. Since his death, power struggles broke out inside the clan. Some wanted the sisters removed because they were young and not yet ready to lead. Others wanted to control them as puppets. The sisters chose to stay in their home instead of fleeing, but they knew danger was near. Ravi listened carefully. He understood the risk, but he had taken dangerous jobs before. What mattered most to him was the way the sisters looked at him. They were afraid, but not weak. They carried themselves with quiet dignity, as if they wanted to prove they would not be broken by fear. That night, Ravi walked through the halls of the crystal dwelling to study the layout. He saw the tall windows, the narrow stairs, and the open courtyard in the center. He made notes in his small tablet, marking places where intruders might try to enter. The alien guards who once served the sisters had left after being bribed by rivals. Now Ravi was the only one standing between them and the outside world. In the courtyard, he paused to look at the stars above. They were brighter here, untouched by the smoke and noise of human cities. For a moment, he thought about his life. He had never stayed long in one place. Every job ended with him moving on. Yet something about this place felt different. The sisters had trusted him without knowing much about him. That trust was rare, and he felt the weight of it on his shoulders. Later, he returned to the main hall. The sisters were sitting at a long table, speaking in quiet tones. When they saw him, they asked him to join. At first, Ravi refused, saying he was only their guard, but they insisted. You will live here as long as you protect us, Neeraj said. That means you share this home with us. Ravi agreed, though he still kept his distance. He ate a simple meal with them, food that tasted strange but not unpleasant. They asked him about human worlds, about the deserts, seas, and cities of his people. He answered in short sentences, but his honesty seemed to please them. When the meal was over, Lyra said, "We know our lives are in danger. But you should know that your life will also be in danger now. Why did you accept this?" Ravi thought for a moment before answering. "Because I was asked." "Because you needed someone." They looked at him in silence. Then, for the first time, Ravi saw them smile. It was a small smile, but it carried warmth. That night, as Ravi walked the halls again, he felt something shift inside him. This was not like other jobs where he simply stood at a gate or watched strangers pass. Here, he was guarding two lives directly. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of their struggle. When he lay down to rest in a small room prepared for him, Ravi kept his hand close to his weapon. He knew the rivals would not wait long. The contract had begun, but it was already clear this job would not be simple. The sisters had trusted him. And he had given his word. He would not let them down. The morning after Ravi's first night in the crystal dwelling began quietly. Sunlight broke over the silver fields outside, sending waves of soft light through the tall windows. The walls reflected the brightness, painting the hall in shifting colors. It was beautiful, yet Ravi kept his mind sharp. Beauty did not stop danger. He knew that better than anyone. He woke early, long before the sisters left their rooms. His first action was to check the doors and gates. Each lock worked well, but Ravi did not trust a lock alone. He set up simple alerts using string and small bells he had carried in his pack. These tools looked primitive compared to alien machines, yet Ravi had learned that sometimes the simplest methods worked best. When Lyra and Neera entered the hall, they noticed his work. "You make traps like a craftsman," Neera said, tilting her head with interest. Ravi gave a short nod. "They make sound. If someone tries to enter, I will hear them." Lyra touched one of the strings lightly. "Strange, but clever. Our guards never thought of such things." Ravi kept his eyes on the gate. Machines can be tricked. Bells cannot be silenced without a hand. The sisters exchanged a glance. They seemed amused but also impressed. Ravi was not trying to impress them. He was only doing his duty, but he noticed how carefully they watched him. Later in the day, Ravi asked for a tour of the dwelling. The sisters agreed and guided him through every part. They showed him the dining room where the walls shimmered in soft gold. They led him to the tall towers where one could see the wide plains stretching far across the moon. The plains were empty, silent, and yet Ravi did not trust the silence. At last, they brought him to the gardens in the back. Strange plants with silver leaves and glowing fruit grew in neat rows. The air smelled sweet, and the ground was soft beneath his boots. Neera picked one of the fruits and handed it to him. "Try it," she said. Ravi hesitated, then took a small bite. The taste was sharp at first, then turned soft and sweet. He nodded once in approval. "It is good," he said simply. The sisters laughed lightly. Their laughter was not loud, but it filled the garden with life. For a moment, Ravi almost forgot he was on duty. He almost forgot the danger that hung over them. But his mind quickly returned to his task. He studied the garden walls, the paths, and the exits. He asked questions about guards, patrols, and past attacks. Nira noticed his focus and asked, "Do you ever rest your mind, Ravi?" He answered calmly, "Rest comes after safety." The sisters did not argue. They knew he spoke the truth. That evening, Ravi checked the outer fields. The dwelling stood alone on the moon's surface, far from other homes. The only sound was the soft wind across the dust. It made him uneasy. A house so open and alone was easy to target. He returned to the hall and began marking weak points on his tablet. The sisters watched from the table where they read old records. Nira finally asked, "You move like you do not trust any wall. Do humans always lie this way?" Ravi paused before answering. "Humans trust only what they see. I see wide ground, weak gates, and too many windows. I prepare because I must." Lyra closed her book and said, "Our people once thought no one would harm us. That belief was our weakness. You are different. You expect harm before it comes." Ravi gave a small nod. "That is why I am here." Night came, and the sisters invited him again to share their meal. This time he did not refuse quickly. He sat across from them, eating quietly as they asked him more about his past. "Do you have family?" Lyra asked. Ravi shook his head. "No. My work keeps me moving. Family needs someone who stays." Nero leaned forward. "So you are always alone?" "Yes," Ravi replied, his voice steady. There was silence for a moment. The sisters seemed to study him, but Ravi kept his eyes on his plate. He was not ashamed of his life. It was simple, and he had chosen it. Yet, for the first time, he wondered what it would feel like not to be alone. When the meal ended, Ravi excused himself and walked the halls once more. As he checked the windows, he caught a faint sound outside. His hand moved to his weapon. He stepped to the courtyard and listened carefully. The sound was gone. Only the wind moved across the fields. But Ravi did not relax. He knew the difference between wind and footsteps. Someone had been near. The next morning, he told the sisters what he had heard. Their faces grew tense. "Our cousin has many spies," Lyra said. "If they know you are here, they may test your strength." "Let them test," Ravi answered. "We will be ready." He spent that day building stronger defenses. He used broken pieces of stone to block hidden paths. He placed small alarms near the garden walls. He checked the tower steps and reinforced the doors with heavy bars. The sisters watched him work. They seemed surprised that a single human could do so much with so little. By evening, the dwelling felt different. It no longer felt like an empty house waiting for attack. It felt like a guarded home. As night fell, Nira spoke softly to Ravi. "When we first heard of you, we thought you were only a hired sword. Now we see you are more. You build, you watch, you prepare. You live with us, not outside us." Ravi did not answer with many words. He only said, "I protect what I guard." The sisters smiled again. In their eyes, he saw not only relief but also respect. That night, Ravi did not sleep deeply. He rested with one ear open, listening to the soft bells he had tied at the gates. For hours, the house was silent. Then, just before dawn, one of the bells rang. Ravi rose at once, weapon in hand, heart steady. He knew the test had begun. The sound of the bell was sharp in the quiet dawn. Ravi's eyes opened at once, and his body moved without hesitation. He took his weapon, a compact human-made rifle, and stepped into the hall. The crystal walls glowed faintly with the first light of the morning. The sisters were still in their rooms, unaware of the alarm. Ravi listened closely. The bell he had tied near the garden wall had been disturbed. That meant someone had tried to cross the barrier. His steps were soft as he moved through the hall and out into the courtyard. He paused there, letting his eyes adjust. The garden beyond looked calm, but Ravi trusted his instincts more than his eyes. He crouched near the ground and studied the dust. Small marks revealed the presence of at least 3 intruders. Their boots had pressed shallow shapes into the silver soil, and one track showed a drag, as if someone carried equipment. Ravi's jaw tightened. This was not a simple mistake by a traveler. It was a planned entry. Quietly, Ravi moved back inside and climbed the stairs to the sisters' rooms. He knocked once on their door and spoke in a steady voice. "Wake. Stay silent. Do not leave the room." The door opened slightly, and Lyra's worried face appeared. "What is wrong?" "Visitors," Ravi answered. "I will handle them. Lock the door and wait." She wanted to ask more, but the calm strength in his voice stopped her. She closed the door and sealed it. Ravi heard the faint click of the lock before he turned away. Back in the courtyard, he positioned himself near the garden gate. His traps had done their job of warning, but they would not stop determined intruders. He needed to see who dared to enter before deciding how to act. Moments later, shadows moved among the silver plants. 3 figures crept forward, each dressed in dark suits that blended with the pale ground. They carried weapons shaped like short spears that hummed faintly with energy. Ravi studied them carefully. Their movements were cautious but not skilled. Hired men, perhaps, not trained soldiers. Ravi raised his rifle and aimed at the ground near them. With a sharp sound, he fired a single shot that struck the soil. Dust burst upward. The intruders froze at once. "Leave now," Ravi called out. His voice was calm but strong. "This place is guarded." For a moment, silence held the garden. Then one of the intruders stepped forward and spoke in a rough voice. "We do not want trouble. We only came to send a message. Step aside." Ravi kept his rifle steady. "The message is received. Leave." But the intruder raised his spear weapon, and the other 2 followed. Energy glowed at the tips. Ravi moved fast. He rolled behind the stone wall he had reinforced the day before and fired again, this time striking the weapon of the lead attacker. Sparks flew, and the weapon dropped useless to the ground. The other 2 rushed forward, but Ravi had already prepared the ground. The strings he had tied between the plants snapped as the men ran into them, and small bells rang loudly. Confused, the attackers slowed for a moment. That was enough time for Ravi to fire 2 more shots, each aimed to disable rather than kill. One attacker's arm was struck, forcing him to drop his weapon, while the other's leg gave out as the bullet grazed it. The 3 intruders cried out and stumbled back toward the wall. Ravi stepped out from cover, rifle raised firmly. His voice was sharp and final. "You leave now, or you will not rise again." Fear showed in their eyes. They looked at each other, then turned and ran, dragging their wounded companion with them. Within moments, they had vanished into the silver dust beyond the garden. Ravi waited, listening for any more movement. The wind carried only silence. Slowly, he lowered his rifle but did not relax fully. He knew this was only the beginning. He returned inside and went to the sisters' room. He knocked once and spoke. "It is safe now. You may open the door." The door slid open, and both sisters stepped out. Their eyes were wide with fear, but when they saw him standing calm and unharmed, their shoulders eased slightly. Who were they? Neera asked. Ravi shook his head. Hired men. Not skilled. Sent to test. Lyra's voice trembled. Sent by our cousin. Most likely, Ravi said. But they were not ready for a fight. They came to frighten you. Next time, it may be worse. The sisters exchanged a worried glance. Ravi could see the weight of fear pressing on them, but he also saw the spark of resolve in their eyes. They were afraid, but they did not want to run. You stopped them, Neera said quietly. Yes, Ravi answered. And I will stop the next ones. But we must prepare. The sisters followed him to the hall, where he explained his plan. He would add more traps around the garden and place alarms near the outer fields. He would use the towers for better watch and train the sisters on how to use basic defense tools if he was ever outnumbered. At first, they were unsure. They had lived their lives in peace, protected by their family name. They were not soldiers. Yet Ravi's steady voice and calm manner gave them courage. We will learn, Lyra said firmly. If they wish to take our home, they will find us ready. Ravi nodded once. He admired their courage. Many people would have chosen to flee, but these sisters wanted to stand their ground. That decision made his task harder, but also more meaningful. The rest of the day passed in quiet labor. Ravi set new alarms and taught the sisters how to signal him if they heard danger. He showed them how to close the heavy bars on the doors and how to move quietly if they needed to hide. The sisters listened carefully, asking few questions, but their eyes showed determination. When evening came, the sisters prepared a meal and invited Ravi again. This time the mood was different. The air of fear had lessened, replaced by a sense of trust. They no longer looked at him as a stranger but as someone who truly stood between them and harm. You fight with skill, Neera said softly as they ate. But you also fight with care. You did not end those men even though you could have. Ravi answered calmly. Dead men bring revenge. Defeated men bring warning. It is better this way. The sisters nodded slowly, understanding his wisdom. That night, as Ravi walked the halls once more, he thought about the day. The first threat had come and gone, but more would follow. His life had always been about moving from place to place, job to job, never staying long enough to care. But now he felt different. The sisters had placed their trust in him, and that trust gave weight to his steps. As he checked the last bell at the garden gate, Ravi whispered to himself, "This home will stand. I will see to it." The wind carried his words away, but the vow stayed with him. The first threat had tested him, but he knew the true battles were yet to come. The days that followed the first attack were quiet, yet Ravi did not allow himself to relax. He rose early each morning, walked the grounds, and checked every trap and alarm he had built. The bells hung steady, the strings were tight, and the walls showed no sign of tampering. Each inspection gave him some comfort, but he knew silence could be more dangerous than open threats. The sisters noticed his routine. From their windows, they often saw him moving across the silver fields or walking the towers with steady steps. At first, they were shy to interrupt his work, but slowly, they began to step outside during his rounds. They asked questions about what he was doing and why. Ravi explained in simple words, showing them how even a stone or rope could serve as defense. You turn small things into strong things, Neera said one morning as she watched him tie a hidden trip line near the garden wall. Everything can serve if used well, Ravi answered. Weakness comes when we ignore what we have. The sisters began to learn from him. At first, their hands moved slowly, unused to such tasks, but their patience impressed Ravi. He showed them how to set bells on strings, how to carry a lamp quietly, and how to stay low when danger was near. They were not soldiers, yet their effort was honest. Life inside the crystal dwelling started to change. The halls no longer felt empty and fearful. With Ravi's presence, the house grew more alive. He repaired broken doors and polished the metal bars. He cleaned corners long ignored and fixed a cracked step on the tower stairs. The sisters, seeing his work, began to help in their own ways. One afternoon, Ravi found Neera in the kitchen, trying to cook with human spices he had carried in his pack. The smell was sharp but pleasant. She looked up with a small smile when he entered. "I wanted to taste food from your world," she explained. "But I may not be doing it right." Ravi tasted the dish carefully. It was different from what he knew, but not unpleasant. He gave a small nod. "It is good." Her smile grew brighter. From then on, meals became shared lessons. Sometimes Ravi cooked, showing them how to roast meat or boil rice. Other times, the sisters prepared their alien fruits and grains, teaching him the flavors of their people. Meals that once carried tension now carried laughter, light talk, and even stories. At night, Ravi continued his patrols, but the sisters no longer stayed locked in their rooms. They sometimes sat in the hall, reading or speaking softly, while Ravi passed by with quiet steps. He never joined their talk unless invited, yet his steady presence seemed to give them peace. One evening, while sitting near the courtyard fire, Lyra spoke to him directly. "You live as if the world is always ready to strike. Do humans never rest?" Ravi stared into the fire for a moment before answering. "Rest is for those who are safe. Safety must be earned first." Nero leaned forward. "But do you not wish for more than guarding walls and fighting shadows? Do you not wish for a home of your own?" Ravi paused. No one had asked him that before. His life had always been one of moving, taking contracts, and leaving before he could build ties. He looked at the fire, then at the sisters. Their eyes carried genuine curiosity, not judgment. "I never thought of it," Ravi admitted. "My path has always been the road. But sometimes, when I see peace in a place like this, I wonder." The sisters shared a quiet glance, but they did not press him further. Still, their question stayed in Ravi's mind long after the fire burned low. The next day, the sisters surprised him. When he entered the hall, they had prepared a small table with tools and metal parts. "You repair everything in this house," Lyra said. "But you work with little. We found old supplies from the cellar. Maybe you can use them." Ravi studied the tools. They were alien-made, yet with steady hands he tested them one by one. Soon, he was repairing broken frames and strengthening weak locks with greater skill. He even built a small lantern system in the courtyard using old wires and crystal stones that glowed when heated. The sisters watched with fascination. "You create light from scraps," Neera said in wonder. "Light is never waste," Ravi answered. "It keeps fear away." As days turned into weeks, Ravi began to feel something unusual. He was no longer just a guard standing at the edge of a foreign home. He was part of it. He ate meals with the sisters, taught them small skills, and fixed what they could not. In return, they shared their knowledge of stars, their stories of old leaders, and their gentle songs that carried through the halls at night. One evening, as the sisters sang in the garden, Ravi listened from the tower. Their voices were soft but carried far across the fields. The melody was unlike anything human, yet it touched him deeply. For the first time in many years, Ravi felt not only the weight of duty but also the warmth of belonging. But his guard never lowered fully. He knew peace was fragile. Each time he looked at the silver plains, he expected movement. Each time the wind carried a strange sound, his hand moved to his weapon. The memory of the first attackers remained sharp in his mind. Still, the sisters' trust gave him strength. They no longer looked at him as an outsider hired to protect. They spoke to him as if he were part of their family. They asked his thoughts on small matters, like which fruit to harvest or which song to sing at evening. Ravi always gave short answers, but inside, he felt something he had not felt before. He felt needed not just as a guard but as a person. One night, as they finished their meal, Nero looked at him and said, "We feared being alone in this house. But now, with you here, it feels like a home again." Ravi gave a small nod. He did not say more, but her words stayed with him. That night, when he walked the halls, the silence no longer felt empty. The crystal walls reflected not only the light of the moon but also the quiet bonds that were forming inside. Ravi had always believed his life was meant for endless roads and endless jobs, but now he wondered if his path had led him here for a reason. The sisters slept peacefully in their rooms, and Ravi kept his watch with steady eyes. The house stood firm, and for the first time in a long while, Ravi felt that he was guarding more than lives. He was guarding hope. The peace inside the crystal dwelling lasted longer than Ravi expected. Days stretched into weeks without a single sound of alarm. The sisters grew more relaxed, and the house filled with the gentle rhythm of life. Lyra spent time in the garden, tending the silver plants. Neera often stayed in the library, studying records left by their late father. Ravi continued his routine of patrols and repairs, but even he felt the stillness creeping in. One evening, while repairing a broken latch in the tower, Ravi noticed something unusual. A small piece of metal was lodged in the lock, hidden deep inside. It looked like part of a device, one that could keep the door from sealing properly. His eyes narrowed. This was not a natural break. It was sabotage. He kept silent and removed the piece, then tested the lock again. It worked perfectly now. As he stood there in the quiet tower, Ravi understood what this meant. The enemy was not only outside. Someone inside the clan had already planted traps long before he arrived. This was not the work of wandering raiders. It was the hand of someone close. That night, during the meal, Ravi decided to speak. His voice was steady, but his words carried weight. The enemy is not far. The damage I found today was made long ago. Your danger is not only outside these walls. It comes from within your family. The sisters froze, their hands still on the table. Lyra's eyes darkened with worry. You mean our cousin? Yes, Ravi answered. These intruders were not acting alone. They had help. Your cousin commands them. Nero lowered her gaze, her voice soft. He was always ambitious. Father trusted him, but he never accepted that we would inherit leadership. We hoped he would honor family ties. Ravi's expression was firm. Hope does not stop betrayal. He has chosen his path. Now we must prepare for more than small raids. He will come again, and this time with greater force. The sisters sat in silence for a moment. The truth was heavy, but they did not break. Instead, they lifted their heads with quiet strength. What do you suggest? Lyra asked. Ravi leaned forward. We must use both your knowledge and my skill. I will prepare the grounds, but you must prepare yourselves. If he comes with many men, I may not stand alone. You must be ready to act." At first, the sisters seemed hesitant, but then Nira spoke with resolve. "Then teach us. We will not run. This is our home. If we flee, we lose not only the house but also our right to lead." Ravi gave a small nod. He had expected this answer. Their courage was strong, though their hands had never held weapons. It would not be easy, but he respected their decision. The next morning began their training. Ravi started simple. He showed them how to stand, how to hold a staff, and how to move quietly through the halls. At first, their movements were clumsy. The staffs felt heavy in their hands, and they stumbled as they tried to strike. But Ravi was patient. He corrected them with calm words, guiding their arms and showing them the rhythm of defense. "You are not fighting to defeat," he told them. "You are fighting to delay, to distract, to survive until I can reach you." Day by day, they grew better. Their strikes grew sharper, their steps more balanced. They learned to set traps with him, to tie strings, to hide bells. Soon, the crystal dwelling became more than a home. It became a fortress, shaped by both human hands and alien will. One afternoon, while they rested after training, Nira asked Ravi, "Do you not fear that we may fail?" Ravi looked at her calmly. "Fear is natural. It warns us of danger. But fear does not decide. Action decides." His words gave them strength. That evening, while walking the outer fields, Ravi found more signs of movement. Broken soil showed where boots had pressed down. A small mark in the dust revealed the print of a heavy crate. Someone had delivered supplies nearby, hidden just out of sight. Ravi followed the trail for a short distance until it led to a ridge. From there, he saw faint smoke rising in the distance. He returned to the house at once and told the sisters. "Your cousin is close. He has a camp on the far ridge. He is waiting, watching. He prepares for an attack." The sisters did not panic. Their faces were pale, but their voices were steady. Lyra spoke first. "If he attacks, we will be ready. You have prepared us." Ravi studied them. He saw fear in their eyes, but also resolve. They were no longer the frightened nobles he had first met. They had chosen to stand and fight, even if the odds were against them. That night, the three of them sat by the courtyard fire. The flames flickered against the crystal walls, casting shadows that danced across the hall. The sisters spoke of their father, telling Ravi stories of his wisdom and fairness. He listened quietly, hearing in their words the reason they fought so hard to protect their home. It was not only about land or power. It was about honor, memory, and the hope of a future not ruled by greed. When the fire burned low, Ravi stood and looked toward the distant ridge. His voice was quiet but firm. "He will come soon. When he does, we will not yield." The sisters rose and stood beside him. "We will face him together," they said. Ravi gave a single nod. The bond between them had grown strong. They were no longer only his employers. They were his companions in a shared struggle. The next morning, he prepared for the final step. He set heavier traps near the outer walls, using sharp stones and wires from the cellar. He reinforced the gates with metal bars. He placed extra weapons in hidden corners, ready for quick use. The sisters helped without hesitation, carrying supplies, tying knots, and testing alarms. The house became alive with the sound of preparation. By evening, everything was ready. The sun set behind the silver plains, and darkness covered the land. From the tower, Ravi looked toward the ridge again. In the faint glow of the moon, he saw movement. Small lights blinked like fireflies. The cousins' camp was stirring. Ravi climbed down and walked into the hall where the sisters waited. He spoke in his steady voice. "They are coming. Be ready." The sisters stood firm, staffs in hand, eyes filled with courage. The crystal dwelling, once a place of fear, now stood as a fortress of hope. Ravi felt a rare sense of pride. He had trained soldiers before, guarded leaders before, but this was different. These sisters were not warriors, yet they chose to fight. And he would stand with them. The night grew silent, but Ravi knew the silence would not last. The hidden enemy had revealed himself. Soon, the battle for the home would begin. The night was calm at first. The silver plains stretched under the pale light of the twin moons. The crystal dwelling glowed softly, its walls reflecting starlight like glass. Inside, Ravi stood ready, his staff resting against his shoulder. Lyra and Nero waited at his side, their eyes fixed on the gates. The silence was heavy, like the pause before a storm. Then came the sound. A distant drum beat of feet striking the ground in unison. The enemy was moving. Ravi's sharp eyes caught the glimmer of metal as shadows gathered at the ridge. The cousin had come with his soldiers, and their numbers were greater than before. "Stay calm," Ravi whispered to the sisters. "We hold the gates. Remember what I taught you. Watch, wait, then strike." The sisters nodded. Their hands gripped their staffs tightly, knuckles pale but steady. The first wave arrived quickly. Dozens of figures in dark armor rushed across the fields, their weapons drawn. They expected weak resistance, perhaps a few frightened servants. Instead, they met a wall of energy. Lyra raised her hand and activated the shield controls hidden in the courtyard. A glowing barrier of blue light shimmered into place around the outer gate. The attackers slammed against it, but the shield held strong. The intruders shouted in surprise. They struck again, this time with heavy tools. Sparks flew as metal scraped against the barrier. "Now," Ravi commanded. Nero pulled a lever hidden in the wall. A set of traps came alive. Stones, tied with wire and weight, dropped from the tower's side. They crashed down on the intruders, scattering them across the ground. Several soldiers fell, others stumbled back, their formation broken. Ravi leapt forward with speed. He slipped out through a side gate and struck at those closest to the walls. His staff whirled like a living branch, knocking weapons aside and sending foes tumbling. His movements were sharp, efficient, and without waste. Inside the courtyard, the sisters did not stay idle. Lyra kept the shield steady, while Nero moved swiftly, resetting traps and ringing bells to signal danger. They were not trained soldiers, but their courage filled the house with strength. The cousin's voice rose above the chaos. He stood at the rear, tall and proud, wearing dark silver armor. His voice carried across the field. "Do not stop. Break the walls. This house belongs to me." His soldiers obeyed, charging again. They brought heavy beams, using them as rams against the gates. The shield flickered as the pressure grew. Lyra clenched her teeth, sweat shining on her forehead as she kept the power flowing. Ravi saw the danger. He struck down 2 soldiers, then pulled back toward the gates. "Hold steady," he called. "Do not let them through." The rams hit again. The shield cracked with light, and the sound echoed like thunder. Finally, with a burst, the shield shattered. The gates swung open under the enemy's force. The soldiers poured inside. The courtyard filled with clashing metal and flying dust. Ravi moved into the center, his staff spinning in circles. He struck high, then low, disarming one foe and tripping another. His presence was like a storm, and the enemy could not pass him easily. The sisters joined him. Neera swung her staff clumsily at first, but she remembered his lessons. She blocked a strike and pushed her attacker back with surprising force. Lyra moved beside her, striking at legs and arms, never aiming to kill, but always breaking the enemy's flow. Together, they slowed the wave long enough for Ravi to hold the line. The cousin stepped forward at last. His eyes glowed with anger, and his voice was filled with scorn. So this is the famous human guard. You fight well, but you cannot stop me. This house is mine by right. Ravi met his gaze calmly. Right is not taken by force. It is earned by honor. You have none. The cousin drew his blade, long and curved, shining under the moonlight. He advanced with heavy steps, soldiers parting to give him space. Ravi raised his staff, ready for the duel. The clash was fierce. The cousin's strikes were powerful, each swing forcing Ravi to step back. The staff blocked again and again, wood against steel, sparks flying in the night. Ravi's arms ached, but his eyes stayed sharp. He moved with precision, letting the cousin waste strength in wild strikes. At one moment, the cousin swung too hard, his blade cutting deep into the stone floor. Ravi seized the chance. He twisted his staff, knocking the blade aside, and struck the cousin's chest with the other end. The armored man stumbled back, breath knocked from his lungs. The soldiers hesitated, watching their leader fall. In that pause, the sisters acted. Together they activated the last trap Ravi had shown them, hidden wires stretched across the courtyard. With a pull, the wires snapped into place, catching the enemy's legs. Many soldiers fell at once, crashing into one another in confusion. Ravi pressed forward, his staff against the cousin's blade again. This time, he struck with more speed, aiming for the weak joints in the armor. The cousin struggled, his face twisted with rage. He swung desperately, but Ravi was faster. With one final strike, he knocked the blade from his hand and pressed the staff against his throat. The courtyard grew silent. The soldiers froze, unsure of what to do. The cousin gasped for breath, pinned to the ground. Ravi's voice rang out clear and steady. This house does not belong to you. It belongs to those who live with honor, not greed. Leave now, or face the shame of defeat forever. The cousin glared at him, eyes burning with hatred. But he could not move, and his soldiers looked away in shame. One by one, they began to retreat. Soon, only silence and dust remained. Ravi stepped back, lowering his staff. The cousin rose slowly, humiliated, but he did not strike again. His eyes promised revenge, but his strength was broken. He turned and walked away, his soldiers following like shadows. When the gates closed once more, the sisters rushed to Ravi's side. Their faces were pale but filled with relief. You saved us, Lyra said softly. Ravi shook his head. No. We saved this place together. Without your courage, it would have fallen. Neera smiled faintly, though her hands still trembled. We stood as one. That is why we endured. The night grew quiet again. The fires of battle burned out, leaving only the glowing crystal walls and the soft hum of the wind. The home still stood, scarred but alive. Ravi looked around the courtyard. He felt pride not in victory, but in the bond that had carried them through. The sisters were no longer helpless. They had fought with him, not behind him. They had proven their strength. And though the cousin had fled, Ravi knew this was not the end. Yet for that night, they had won. For that night, the dwelling remained a place of light against the darkness. The morning after the battle, the crystal dwelling stood in calm silence. The twin moons had set, and sunlight streamed over the silver plains. Dust from the previous night's fight had settled, and the courtyard looked peaceful once again. Ravi walked through it slowly, inspecting the gates and walls. Every corner was quiet, and for the first time, he allowed himself a small sense of relief. Lyra and Nira appeared in the courtyard shortly after. Their eyes were bright with cautious joy, and they moved carefully over the places where the enemy had fallen. Though nothing was broken beyond repair, they understood the cost of the battle. "You did more than protect us," Lyra said softly. "You taught us to fight. You gave us courage when we had none." Ravi shook his head, a small smile appearing for the first time. "You already had courage. I only showed you how to use it." Nira nodded, her hands still faintly trembling from the adrenaline of the night before. "I never thought we could fight like that. But with you, we did not feel afraid." "Not truly." Ravi's eyes scanned the horizon. The cousin had fled, but he was likely gathering more followers to return another day. The threat was not gone, but it had been delayed. And that delay gave the sisters time to prepare for the future. Over the next days, Ravi helped repair and strengthen the dwelling further. Broken gates were fixed, crystal walls polished, and damaged defenses improved. He trained the sisters even more, showing them better ways to defend the house and themselves. He taught them to set small traps in the garden, to move silently through corridors, and to recognize signs of danger early. Lyra and Nero learned quickly. Their confidence grew, and their fear faded with every lesson. During this time, the sisters began to share more of themselves with Ravi. Lyra often walked with him through the garden, explaining the plants and their uses. She showed him which fruits were edible and which were only decorative. Ravi listened, asking questions and learning to see the world as they did. Nira spent long hours with him in the library, studying maps and records. She asked about human tactics and the way human guards prepared for attacks. Ravi explained carefully, comparing strategies from his own world with the sisters' knowledge of their clan. Together, they found ways to combine human skill with alien intelligence. As weeks passed, life became more than survival. Meals were shared without hurry, and the sisters would often help Ravi cook simple dishes. He learned their tastes, and they learned his. Evenings became a time for stories, laughter, and small games that tested reflexes and thinking. The crystal dwelling, once tense and silent, had become a home alive with life and warmth. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in soft orange and silver, Lyra approached Ravi. "Ravi, you have been with us for many days now. We owe you more than gratitude." Ravi shook his head, keeping his voice calm. "I did what I promised. Protection is my job." Nira added, "No. You did more than protection. You stayed. You shared our home. You helped us grow stronger. That is more than a guard's duty." Ravi considered their words. For years, he had moved from place to place, never staying, never belonging. He had never thought of having a home, and yet now, standing here with the sisters, he felt the pull of connection. Lyra's eyes met his, calm but firm. "Ravi, will you stay with us?" Not only to guard, but to be part of our lives. Ravi felt a weight he had never known. To belong, to be needed, was a rare gift. He nodded slowly. I will stay. I will guard, yes. But I will also live here with you. This home is ours together now. The sisters smiled, relief and joy in their faces. For the first time, they felt completely safe. The bond between them and Ravi had become stronger than any shield or weapon. They had faced danger together, and now they would live together, not as master and guard, but as family. In the following weeks, the dwelling continued to thrive. Ravi helped the sisters manage their home, not only preparing for threats but improving life inside. Gardens grew fuller, traps were refined, and the halls gleamed under careful hands. The sisters taught him more about their culture, and Ravi shared stories of human worlds, making the house a bridge between two peoples. The clan outside began to whisper about the human who had stood against betrayal. News traveled slowly, but the story of Ravi's courage spread. Many who had once doubted the sisters' ability to defend themselves began to see them in a new light. Their cousin's failed attempt had weakened his influence, and whispers of loyalty toward the sisters grew stronger. Inside the dwelling, peace finally settled. Lyra and Nira no longer lived in fear. Ravi's presence was steady and calm, but it was more than that. He had become a companion, a teacher, and a part of their lives. They no longer needed to hide behind crystal walls and fear. They had learned courage, and they had learned trust. One evening, as the sisters played quietly in the courtyard, Ravi watched from the tower. The moonlight shimmered on the silver plants, and the wind moved gently across the plains. For a moment, he thought about his old life. A life of endless roads, fleeting jobs, and no home. And then he looked at the sisters, smiling softly at one another, and he realized that he had found something better. This was a home. Not just a building of crystal and light, but a home built on trust, courage, and shared struggle. Ravi had once been a guard who protected from a distance. Now he was part of the family he had sworn to protect. The days continued peacefully, filled with small joys and steady vigilance. The sisters trained less in combat now, but they kept practicing. They grew stronger, more confident, and the house felt alive with hope. Ravi no longer patrolled with the same tense steps as before. He still watched the horizon, still kept the alarms ready, but he did so with calm assurance. The enemy had been delayed, and the home was safe. One morning, Lyra approached him with a small bouquet of silver flowers. "These are for you," she said softly. "For staying with us, for keeping us safe, and for becoming part of our family." Ravi accepted them with a quiet nod. "I did what I promised. But I will keep doing it as long as I am needed." Nira joined, holding a simple crystal lantern. "And we will need you always. Not only to protect, but to live with us. You are part of this home now." Ravi looked around the courtyard, at the glowing crystals, the gardens, and the sisters who had become more than charges. He smiled faintly, a rare expression of contentment. For the first time, he felt the weight of belonging, the warmth of being part of something lasting. The home that had once been threatened now stood strong, alive with life and laughter. The human guard had become more than a protector. He had become family, and the crystal dwelling had finally become a true home. And under the silver moons and quiet stars, Ravi, Lyra, and Nero lived together, safe, strong, and united, ready to face any challenge that might come, together as one.